May I have one?
So first off, I love the opening of the film. It was brilliant. Who came up with the idea?
Well, you can call me David. Go further. Who came up with? Well, the way that John Hay and I have worked together for God, years and years, about 25 years. John was the very first person I ever met who worked in the film industry. I used to work in a video store in Brighton, down on the south coast of England, where I live. And he was one of my customers, and he came in, and someone had told him that I used to work in the video store at night, and I used to write all day, write screenplays, and someone had told him that's what I did, and he started reading my early scripts, and he got me my first agent, he got me my first paid work, and we worked together for all these years. A few years ago, we won an Emmy together. It's a nice journey. This is our latest, and the way we work together is we will sort of work out an outline together. We'll sit in the same room, argue back and forth until we have a pretty detailed outline of the film, and then one of us, it's just whoever's available at the time, who's the most available, because we don't work solely with one another. We work on lots of different things with lots of different people. We just come back together every now and again. So whoever's got the time, when at that moment, we'll write the first draft. So I can't remember. I think it was John wrote the first draft of the script on this project. I think that's right, but that was 7 years ago, so I can't quite remember. But we would have worked it out together in a room, worked out what it is, and then. But we write a lot of drafts, and so that would have changed over time. I think the first version was set in New York in a bookshop, and he was doing a reading. It's always been a reading of James and the Giant Peach, because that was the book he had written before he had written Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Have you read any of Roald Dahl's books? And if so, which one is your favorite?
I have. I've read all of them multiple times. I grew up reading Roald Dahl. Of his children's books, I think Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is possibly my favorite. It's one I love in particular, and I go back to, and I've read it. I read it when I was a kid, and I read it to my kids when they were growing up. I love Fantastic Mr. Fox. I love The Twits. I really love he wrote 2 autobiographies called Boy and Going Solo, which Boy's about his childhood, and Going Solo is when he's a young man. It's during his wartime years, and he was working for Shell before the war, and just his life at that point. They're both fascinating. I really love his short stories as well, because he wrote loads of stories for adults. That's what he did first before he was. I know he's really well known for children's books, but he used to write these really dark, macabre, twisted adult stories, which I really love too. So, big fan.
Okay, so what are the 3 words you would use to describe the movie To Olivia?
That's a tricky one. I think honest would be one of them. We tried to make a very honest film. What happens is a very universal thing. It can happen to anyone. It just so happens that these 2 people are quite famous. I think heartbreaking. I wrote it, and I've seen it numerous times, and I still have a bit of a cry at certain points in it. So I don't know, honest, heartbreaking, and hopeful.
There were some intense moments, obviously, in the film, especially the scenes that had Roald Dahl dealing with the death of his daughter. Did you or Mr. Hay use your personal experiences to write these scenes, or was the source material strong enough for you just to flesh out those scenes?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't want to answer. I don't answer for John. He has, yeah, he has, lost someone dear to him in his life. But that would be something for him to. As for me, I've got 3 children, so I'm very, very lucky that my kids have, not had anything like that. I haven't lost any of them, but as a father, I can. It's a cliche, I think, but it's every parent's worst nightmare. So it's, so no, I wasn't basing it on fortunately for me, having experienced anything remotely like that. But I can imagine. That's what I do. That's my job. I make stuff up for a living.
When you wrote those scenes for Roald Dahl with him dealing with depression, were there any point of writing those scenes that you were afraid that the viewers might dislike him, especially the way his mood was affecting his family?
Yes and no. We assumed people would dislike him, but that didn't worry us. Because of what I said earlier, when you asked for the 3 words, it's honest, and that is, we've done extensive research, and he did struggle, as I think is understandable. It's a very human emotion in the face of something as terrible as that. How do we deal with something like that? So. I just don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have been an honest film if he hadn't. We did go somewhere quite dark with him, and similarly at the same time, Patricia's, she's going through all that as well, but she can't break down in the same way as he does, because turn off and shut off from the world and shut off from his family. If she was going to do that too, then they've got 2 little kids left who need looking after. So she just wasn't given the choice to do that. So we knew he was. He's a difficult character, absolutely.
So, what is your writing habit in general?
My writing habit in general, I write a lot. I write. I work 5 days a week. I try not to work weekends because I have a wife and 3 kids and a dog, and weekends are for the family. But during the week, I'll work. I'll get up. I get up quite early. Usually, get my youngest son off to school. My eldest son's in university, so except everything's different at the moment because no one's in school, no one's in university. But generally, I'll get my youngest son off to school, and I'll sit down and I'll start work, and then I'll take a break, sort of mid-morning, give my dog a walk, then go back to it and work through until, depending what day it is, if my wife's cooking dinner or if one of the kids is cooking dinner, I'll work a bit longer. And if it's me cooking dinner, then I'll stop about 6 o'clock, and then the evening is usually for family. If I've got a lot of work on, then sometimes when everyone else goes to bed, I come back to work. But I try not to do that because it catches up with you and be exhausted by Wednesday.
How was your experience co-writing To Olivia with John Hay?
Like I said before, Joe, it's something John and I have done for years and years and years. So, we're old friends, and we've got a bit of a routine. So it was it was fine. It was much like all the other times we write together. We tend to argue quite a lot. We're both quite passionate about things. We disagree a lot. And somewhere in the end, we also write lots of drafts. We will write dozens and dozens of drafts before anyone else ever gets to read it. It'll be just internal for the two of us, going back and forth, and we will do that until we feel it's ready for other people to read, and then we'll give it to people whose opinions we trust, and then we'll write more drafts based on their responses, long before it goes out to anyone like Hugh Bonneville or the producers, financiers, anything like that. So we've got a routine between us.
So were you ever on set for the making of the film?
Mm-hmm.
If so, tell me what scene you were present at, and were you able to meet any of the cast members?
Yep, I was on the set a few times, and let's see, I was around for the first scene when Hugh's reading to the kids. So I met Hugh. I'd already met Hugh Bonneville. We went and met him quite early on in a hotel in Sussex. We sort of had a room there and like a conference room, and we went through multiple versions of the script. I've never met an actor quite like him. He's got a writer's mind. I'm surprised he hasn't written, and maybe he has, and I'm just not aware of it. But he's very analytical. He can break down different drafts of scripts, which is something I do all the time because that's my job. But I've rarely come across an actor who can do it like he does it. And he was so well informed, and we went through the scripts, and there's things like, in this draft you had this line. Why have you taken it out? That's a much better line than the line you replaced it with. And he's like, yes, you're right, Hugh. It is a better line. We'll put it back. So Hugh was great. And so, yes, I was there that day. I took, like I said, I've got 3 kids. So I took my eldest son the first day. That was quite early on in shooting. Then what else was I there for? I was there for the scenes which are supposed to be in Paramount Studios with Paul Newman and Marty Ritt, played by Sam Heughan and Conleth Hill, and Keeley, when she pitches them the version of the bus station scene from HUD. I took my daughter there for that scene, and I took my little son there. I can't remember what we were filming then. But that was actually filmed nowhere near LA. That was filmed in a place called Saltdean, which is a few miles up the road along the coast from where I live, and I grew up there. So that building I used to spend my childhood around there. My best friend, when I was sort of 3 or 4, used to live around the corner from that building. It was very surreal to be there. And so I met Keeley, and I met Sam, who is just the nicest person I've ever met. He when he's talking to you, he's properly talking to you. He's not thinking about something else. He had found out my daughter wants to. She's 16. She's doing her A levels at the moment. She's really into physics and science, and she wants to. She's leaning at the moment towards sort of astrophysics, and he started a conversation about NASA, and he was when he met my little son, he was just as brilliant, and Conleth was lovely. So I met the girls who played Olivia and Tessa, Darcy and Isabel. They were lovely. So I was there for something else as well. I can't remember what that was. Because I remember I took a friend of mine there to show him. He was over from the city. One of my oldest friends now lives in the States. He lives in Houston, and so he was over. I took him to the set. I'm trying to think what they were filming that day. It was in the gardens of the house. I can't remember exactly what we were filming. I think it was when the girls make the tribute for the fairy parade. I think that's what they were filming that day.
So my next question is, what is the best advice you have ever received about writing?
Best advice I've received is, I don't know, there's lots. Writers write. I've over the years, I've met lots of people who want to be writers, and I can't tell which ones will make it because that's really hard to say. But I've got pretty good at telling the ones that can't, and they're the ones who they'll come up with an idea, and they'll maybe write one draft, maybe two, and then they'll give it to you. And if you don't think it's the greatest thing that's ever been written, they'll get bored of it and go, "Oh, I've got this other idea." And I learned, and I taught one of the first things when John and I started out. Do you know if the movie A Fish Called Wanda? It's written by John Cleese, Kevin Kline, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Palin, John Cleese. It's brilliant film from about 1988, 87, somewhere around there. And there was a quote from John Cleese about how many different drafts he had written of A Fish Called Wanda. And John, my co-writer, John Hay, printed that out for both of us, and we put it on our walls in front of our respective desks. And I think so. My best bit of advice is scripts aren't written; they're rewritten. And anyone who's scared of rewriting, I don't think is a writer. So rewriting is the best piece of advice I got. And I do. I rewrite things endlessly until they're as good as they can be.
Who inspired you to be a writer, like a screenwriter?
Who inspired me? Who inspired me was I guess it was George Lucas, because I was, it's not a particularly original answer, but I was just the right age when Star Wars came out, the very first one, and I remember going to the cinema and watching that, and I was absolutely blown away by Star Wars. And then there was a program in the UK when I was growing up called Clapperboard, which was like behind the scenes making of movies thing, and they went to the set and they were shooting the scene in Mos Eisley when the Millennium Falcon bursts, flies out of there, and stormtroopers are shooting the Falcon, and Han Solo's shooting back. And so I was watching that, and when I'd watched Star Wars, I wanted to be Han Solo. Still want to be Han Solo. Everyone wants to be Han Solo. But then I saw this making of, and it sort of introduced me to the idea. I was 7 or 8. Introduced me to the idea of the director. It's like, wow, someone tells Han Solo what to do. I want to do that. And then it was like an 8-year-old, like, well, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. But I was always writing. I was always coming up with stories. I used to make comic books, and it occurred to me that I can write things. And then when I was a teenager, I started making short films, and that's sort of where it started. So I guess George Lucas was one of the big ones. And then as I learned more about films, it was definitely Billy Wilder, who is probably my favorite writer and director. So much so, in fact, I named my eldest son, he's called Joseph, but his middle name, my wife's family have a tradition in their family. They like the name William to be in the name somewhere. So my wife said, "Can it be Joseph William?" And I said, "Well, if he's going to be William, can it be Joseph William Wilder Logan? So that his surname is going to be Billy Wilder." So I've now Joseph's he's 19. I've got to ask him sometime if he's all right with that. I always liked it. It's a pretty cool name. I thought at the end of the day, if you're called, Wilder's pretty cool. So he's not objected to me anyway yet.
What were the challenges that you faced adapting Stephen Scherer's book An Unquiet Life?
Gosh, I mean, Stephen's book was brilliantly insightful and helpful. It's not so much adapting it. I think what we got from Stephen's book, which was utterly invaluable, was that Patricia became a real person because of his book for us. I think, talking to Stephen, he's an American too. He said that Patricia is much better known in America. Obviously, people know who Dahl is, but she's still in Stephen's circle. She's still a big deal. I knew her less. I know, I'd seen HUD. I'd seen The Day the Earth Stood Still. I'd seen Breakfast at Tiffany's and all those things. But she wasn't. Roald, growing up, as I said before, was a part of my childhood. Reading the books and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's so I knew more and felt more connection to him when we started this process. And what Stephen's book gave me, I can't speak for John, but what it gave me was I suddenly had Patricia as well, and I understood Patricia, and he writes so brilliantly, and I completely understood who this woman was now. And so if you go through the hundreds of drafts, I told you we write lots of drafts, you'll see there's a point when it does change, that she becomes, we just wrote her better after Stephen's book. Because we were already working on, we wanted to do, I think this actually started, like I said, 7 years ago. So it was like 2013. So, long ago that now. And it was because I think John had read something that said, it's going to be Roald Dahl's The 100 Years Since He Was Born in 2016. And he said, it's in a few years, it'll be 100 years since he was born. We should write something about Roald Dahl. And then we started looking for what that something was, and we came across this story. If you read Roald's life, he's got lots of amazing things. He has a very interesting life. He used to fly planes in the war, crashed twice. He was a sort of spy in Washington during the war. Working under Ian Fleming. Lots of interesting things. There's lots of things we could have picked on. This is the thing that meant something to us, and then we had to try and find how to tell this story. And so when we found Stephen's book, that's what it gave me.
This film is Geoffrey Palmer's last movie before his death in November 2020. Did you ever get to meet him in person?
I didn't. I did 2 films with Geoffrey, and I didn't get to meet him on either, which is very sad. But he was very old friends with John. So John did a TV series before I met him, so probably 30 some years ago, called Stig of the Dump. Have you ever heard of Stig of the Dump? It's quite a famous children's book over here. I'm not sure if it's ever been released in America. It's about a little boy who finds a caveman living in the local dump, and the caveman's called Stig. So John persuaded Geoffrey, who was quite a big star over here at that time. He's in some big TV shows. Persuaded him, or just after that, he persuaded him to come and do a recurring role in that series. And they just hit it off, he and John, and they stayed friends for the rest of Geoffrey's life. And every time John filmed something, Geoffrey would play a part. At one point, John was filming in India, and he got Geoffrey to come over to India to film for one day this thing for the BBC. And in 2011, John and I did a project called Lost Christmas with Eddie Izzard, which I wrote the book for. And Geoffrey played a brilliant part in that. And then this was the last thing he did, and it was quite fitting that it was for John. And I don't think Geoffrey really wanted to do anything. He just did it as a favour for John.
Okay.
And so very sad we lost him, but he's utterly brilliant.
So this is my last question. If you're ever to have a dinner chat with Roald Dahl and Patricia Neal, what would you ask each of them?
That's a question. I would probably hope that, we did try to be very respectful to them. This is, a horrible thing to happen to people. And, even though Roald and Patricia are no longer with us, their family are. So all the way through it, we did, I'm sure that the family didn't particularly want to have this horrible period of time replayed. I know I wouldn't want to, but we did try and tried to be respectful. I would want to know that they didn't want to kill me after that, if there's no hard feelings, I hope. I would probably bore Patricia to death with questions about Audrey Hepburn and Paul Newman and her movie career and Gary Cooper, which would be a touchy subject in front of Roald. And I would, I don't know, I think I was probably most fascinated by Roald's war years, I think. Like I said, he a spy in Washington under Ian Fleming as a spy master. I would ask lots of questions about that.
My name is Roald Dahl. Some of you may know my books.
Well done for Johnny and the Giant. Pineapple. Oh, thank you.
And this is my wife, Patricia Neal, star of stage and screen.
You're one big kid, and the day you stop is the day I filed for divorce.
Come on, Daddy.
We had 2 daughters, Olivia and Tessa.
Livy?
But a story can have many pages.
Where were we?
Chapter 5.
Yes.
Spark's gone out of you, hasn't it, Dahl?
It's not just you who's lost Livy.
You have to fix it before it's so broken and it can't be fixed anymore. We all become stories in the end. Don't you think she'd like to be remembered with a happy one? One gobstopper, please.
I want you to be in my picture pad.
Patricia Neal for Paul Newman.
This big marshmallow mountain.
I like that. That's a very good idea.
Many people have called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one of the finest children's books.
Do you like it?
I love it.
I rather think she would have liked it as well. To Olivia.